So, David, you're our one attendee at the moment, because the other people on the meeting at the moment are members of their steering committee who organised the session today. So
that's really encouraging, isn't it?
Yeah. So this is consultancy, so we will invoice you for this.
So, David, perhaps we could invite you to tell our group about your organisation.
Yeah, sure. Onboard IT are basically, obviously, we're Microsoft Gold partners. We're OEM Gold partners at the moment, although it does tend to vary year to year as to what we are, whether we're silver or gold, or whether it's OEM or something else, depending on what we can achieve at the time. Basically, we're a services managed services company based in Townsville in North Queensland. We primarily look after small to medium-sized businesses in and around the Townsville region, but we do stretch as far as Mackay, Mount Isa, Cairns, and we even have clients down in Brisbane. We have, from time to time, done interstate work as well. We also have a presence of sorts in Papua New Guinea. One of our directors works out there near enough full time on a sort of 3-on 3-off type roster. We work primarily with one of the local landowner organisations in PNG that's associated with one of the mines, and he basically manages an IS department for somewhere between 10 and 12 companies out there for the local landowners, which is quite good for us because it gets us a sales market out there, plus a presence out there, which is always nice to have somewhere else that you've got access to. What more can I tell you about? That's probably it at the moment.
Appreciate it. How long have you been a member of Iamcp?
About 2 weeks.
Good as well. Welcome. And we're very glad to have you on the call today. So we'll get going. It's 12:05, so people have had a chance to try and log in. So we'll press on. So welcome, David, and thank you for everybody else for attending. We do have a few more people who've RSVP'd, so we'll see if they decide to connect in as we're going. Our efforts won't be entirely wasted in terms of not having a large number of members attending, apart from David, who we're glad that you joined, because we will be recording the session, and so we'll try and cut that up so it's produced, and then we'll try and publish it somewhere so that some of the information that's presented today can get to the members that we've got. So the agenda that we've got today is to run through a quick update of Iamcp, and then intro Gary's session, Philippa's partner-to-partner networking session, and then go to any questions that we may have. So in terms of Iamcp, we did form a steering committee about a year ago, and the slide on screen shows the current members of the steering committee, where we have a chair, Philippa's the vice chair, Gary's our communications officer looking after Twitter and LinkedIn. Dean Swan from Microsoft represents Microsoft on our steering committee. Tom is our treasurer and New South Wales lead. Graham in Western Australia is our secretary. Gail's on the steering committee representing Express Data. Paul Collins leads Queensland for us. Per Werngren has been instrumental in setting up our steering committee and re-establishing the chapter as our mentor from Iamcp International. And Sophie Corker recently joined our steering committee from Microsoft as well. We have great support from Microsoft. Mike Davies is also a steering committee member. He's from the Assessment Portal, and we do have a few positions vacant, and we will be requesting nominations for those at the general meeting we're hoping to run in November. Thanks, Gary. I think you've got the slides to advance. Okay, so today Iamcp has around 4,000 members globally. In Australia, we're up to 60 members. There's 10,000 Microsoft partners in Australia, and our vision for our chapter is to try to get to perhaps 100 or so in each state. The main value proposition of Iamcp is partner-to-partner networking, and that's best done face-to-face. So we hope eventually our chapter will have enough momentum to run regular face-to-face meetings in the capital cities. And to do that, we need probably at least 100 members in each state to make those meetings of the right size. The other areas that Iamcp operates is advocacy, so advocating in industry and the press on behalf of Microsoft partners, also advocating to Microsoft on behalf of partners. And we think that's particularly important for unmanaged partners, as Iamcp offers another way to have a voice with Microsoft. Community is an important part of what Iamcp does. Overseas, much larger Iamcp chapters have been involved in disaster relief and also other community efforts. With more than 10,000 partners, Microsoft partners in Australia, if we can get to a significant size, perhaps we can do some significant community work. And then finally, education and growth. Iamcp, or Microsoft sees Iamcp as a channel for readiness enablement for partners, and hopefully that will lead to partner growth. Thanks, Gary. So today, our Iamcp Steering Committee meets monthly. I did mention that we will have an annual general meeting in November, and we are looking for nominations for the Steering Committee at the moment. Gary's leading our nominations committee. We're looking to increase the diversity of the Steering Committee by geography, so there's some states where we don't have representation on the Steering Committee, for example, South Australia, and also by competency. We will release a map by geography and by competency of the current Steering Committee, indicating areas that we're looking for some more diversity. One of the initiatives that we've kicked off recently is Link and Learn. And so if we jump to the next slide, Gary, I'll describe Link and Learn. So realise that we are a small chapter in a large country. And David, we're delighted to have you on board because on this meeting because, as you mentioned, you're in Townsville. So, in Australia, how do we engage and have a communication across the country? And so we hope that these sorts of webinar type sessions are a way to do that. And so we plan to run these monthly. Quick update from Iamcp Australia, a guest speaker each month on a interesting topic, and then also one of the Iamcp members presenting on their organisation with a view to partner networking. That might be a sell with opportunity where they're looking for someone to join bid with, or it might be sell to. Some of our partners are selling to other partners. So today we have Gary presenting everything that you wanted to know about MPN and certification but were afraid to ask, and Philippa Preston, who's the founder and CEO of Software Optimization Services, will present the P2P session. So firstly, to introduce Gary. Gary has got about 25 years experience in Microsoft Channel and MPN, and in particular in the training or the learning partner side of things. Gary worked as CTO for QA, which is one of Europe's largest learning partners, and today is the Microsoft National Product Manager at DDLS. So please welcome Gary for his session.
Thank you very much, Mel. Can you just confirm, everybody, or Mel, that you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Welcome to today's session. I think I've got about 20 minutes to talk about the wonderful world of exams and Microsoft Partner Networks and renewal. And as Mel said, I've been doing this job for far too long, and I'm battle-scarred from 20 plus years of either wholly owning the Microsoft relationship and the renewal process, being connected to, or being the guy who did it once, so he's the guy you've got to go and ask the questions of. If anybody in the call's ever had the onerous job of renewing their partner agreement, it's not pleasant. And one of the areas that's particularly confusing, I think, for people is the whole, what exams do I need for what competency and how do I get them, etc. So that really is the purpose of today's session. I won't dwell on the agenda. I think Mel did a good job really of highlighting what the objectives were. But just to pull out the edited highlights really, at the end of today's session, if you understand the structure of the certification and exam requirement from the Microsoft Partner Network, then I think we've done a good job. And at the end of the session, I'll be absolutely delighted to take any questions, either over this forum or via email. And with that in mind, let's talk about the beginning. I'm often guilty of living in the past. I kind of like the olden days. And I guess in the days of NT4, Windows Server 2000, a certification known as the MCSE was king. It took over from Novell's CNE program, really. I think the good thing about the MCSE to start with was it was well understood as a brand. People understood what MCSE was all about, and it became the de facto measurement by which people were recruited. You're an MCSE, you qualify, tick in the box, come and join our organisation. The challenge came really as Microsoft matured as an enterprise business from just NT4 workstation, NT4 server. Suddenly there was back office, Exchange, SQL, all those kind of products. And it became just a monolithic nightmare. Suddenly you're an MCSE plus I, plus S. There were electives all over the place. Worst case scenario, to become a Microsoft Certified Solutions Engineer in the kind of dim and distant days of NT4, there was 57 days worth of training. So if you took all the worst case or the longest courses, if you chose to do courses, you'd be training for 57 days. Frankly, that was never going to happen. It became unwieldy, it became confusing. Nobody kind of understood what it meant outside of a few select people. So Microsoft took that on board, and in 2005 they abandoned the MCSE, the Microsoft Certified Solutions Engineer program, and they introduced something which should be familiar to most people on the call, which was a Microsoft Certified Technology Specialist and Certified IT Professional program. This was much more modular. The entry point was this thing called Technology Specialist, just down here, and that aligned to a product. So you might become a SharePoint Technology Specialist or an Exchange Technology Specialist. It became very, very aligned to the products and technologies that you used in your day-to-day job. And for a lot of people in my experience, that was the end of the certification journey. They did that for a few products, that was it. However, you could move up to Certified IT Professional or even the Master or Architect program just above that. I think this worked pretty well. It was a very modular mechanism. The big advantage was you tended to do one course, one exam, and you got that certification. It was not broadly understood by industry. And if you go back in time 12 months, if you were to seek, you'd find there's still a lot of people recruiting for MCSE qualifications, even though that had been disbanded some time ago. The challenge we have as organisations looking after Microsoft is that many of the existing competencies, the gold thingy that we've got now, the silver what's it that we have now, are based on this model, are based on exams from this model, and a lot of those exams are retiring. So I guess the good news is the MCSE and MCSA are back, and so is something called the Microsoft Certified Solution Developer. So Microsoft has abandoned the MCTS program in 95% of cases and has reintroduced the MCSE program. And this really has hit with the arrival of Wave 15 products. The Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer is now the Microsoft Certified Systems or Solutions Expert, rather. And I think they're going back to a well-known brand. I think that the negative is there's no longer a one-to-one relationship. You no longer do a single piece of learning, a single exam and get a certification. These things now require multiple pieces of learning, multiple exams in order to achieve a certification. And I think for the second time in Microsoft's history, they've introduced a mechanism whereby a certification will retire and need topped up effectively every sort of 2 to 3 years, depending on the technology. There was a time, I'm an MCSE and NT4. It's a legacy certification, but it's still a valid certification. Going forward, that will no longer be the case. And they cite the fact that technology is changing very rapidly. And we see that with R2 releases of products which have only been in market sort of 6 to 8 months, I guess. So in this brave new world of Microsoft certification, the MCSA or Solutions Associate would be the entry point. And I've just popped these down at the bottom here. These are pretty much standalone. You can become a certified expert, if you will, in Windows 8. They've made it backwards compatible with Windows 7 and with Windows Server 2008. Generally, we don't necessarily care about those too much at this stage. If you work in the development space, the Solutions Developer is back. They have 3 streams you can go for: Windows Store apps, web applications, or SharePoint apps. My prediction is, and what I've seen on the stats so far, is that SharePoint apps will be the more popular of those certifications. I'd suggest that for 80% of Microsoft partners, it's likely that something like the MCSA for Windows Server 2012 will be the point in which they start. That forms the basis of a whole number of MCSE type certifications. You'll recall that earlier on in the session I said that it got confusing, it wasn't modular, it became very monolithic. Microsoft were keen not to repeat that mistake. So what they've done going forward is actually make a multi-tiered, if you will, MCSE program. So you're now required to do Windows Server 2012 MCSA, could be the only certification you ever do, or you could choose to specialise and achieve MCSE in messaging, or MCSE in server infrastructure, or MCSE comms, etc., etc., etc. There is also a special stream, if you will, for those who work with data and with business intelligence and the data platform competencies in the form of SQL Server 2012 MCSA, MCSE, data platform and business intelligence. So just sort of taking all of that and just trying to sort of put that in a single sentence, what's occurred? What's occurred is the existing certifications are being retired. They will stay on people's transcripts, but will over time cease to be valid certifications. They've reintroduced the MCSE and the MCSA certifications, and they or components from those certifications form the basis of the requirements for a lot of the competencies. In terms of the structure of the certifications, I've taken these from some of the collateral I created a little while ago, just to highlight that if you did want MCSA Windows Server 2012, there are upgrade routes to achieve that certification. If you were new and vanilla and you wanted to do classroom-based training, you can see here the point I was making earlier on. You do a course, you do an exam, you do some learning, you do an exam, you do some learning, you do an exam, and only at the end of that do you actually get the certification. And that differs from what we've had in the past, where do a course, do an exam, you become a Microsoft Certified Technology Specialist. Again, if you're interested in these models, I have lots and lots that I'm very happy to share with you. One of the things that I've discovered over the years working with Microsoft partners, and I worked for EPG out of Redmond for a little while, although bizarrely I did that from Manchester in the UK, managing accounts in Sydney, was how many people or what skills have my people got? Are they able to actually sort of just go and do the exam? And I said, yeah, the answer is quite probably. And one of the ways that you can assess that for your own staff is to visit microsoft.com/learning. Put in the competency exam, a little bit more about that in a couple of slides, that you're interested in achieving, and then review the skills measured. And you'll see on the website, you'll see the different areas where marks for the exam come from. So roughly 25% of marks for this particular exam come from plan and implement, high availability, server virtualization, identity and access solutions. And what you can then do is you can then drill into each of those and say to your staff, you know, in terms of designing a certificate service infrastructure, can you design a multi-tier certificate authority, CA hierarchy with offline route CA ... And if the answer is no, then frankly they're not going to pass the exam. And I've used this data many, many times for creating training needs analysis for organisations who want to try and work out what skills they've got, where they can pass the exams, and really the competencies of the staff on board. If you've got somebody who can just sail through the exam, great. If not, you can also review the learning options. There are instructor-led courses, which is the world in which I work. In some instances, there are exam prep videos from Microsoft, self-paced training, community forums, even books. I believe people still read books, not done it for a while myself. It's all online on Surfaces and Kindle-type devices these days for me. So actually, that's a reasonably useful little tip, really. Actually dive into the exams, see what's being measured, and then measure your staff against those. Cut and paste it into Excel is something I've done many, many times. Speaking of exams, one of the things I wanted to do in the session was just talk about exams. I guess going back in time to the late 90s, early noughties, the MCSE actually did some damage to itself. It became known as a paper MCSE. You could go and read some books and pass the exam. Microsoft marketed it as be a taxi driver on the Friday almost, do this exam, get some training, become an MCSE, get a high-paid job on the Monday. They've taken a while to actually recover from that. I think they have done. In terms of the exams now, and I certainly appreciate you can't see it that well on the slide, but now it's no longer just multi-guess. There are case studies, as you can see in that example. There are things where you're required to interact, as well as multi-guess and choose multiple options and choose the best option. And I think the thing I like best is they now include simulations. There are simulations. If you go and try and do something a bit bizarre, it will tell you, hey, this is way outside of scope. We were never pre-programmed to understand what you're doing there. But you are required to actually go and physically do something, connect to a SQL database, run a repair, do something clever with directory services. And I'm happy to share these slides. I've put in some videos where you can see each of the types of exams. Again, building up the journey, we talked about the certifications and the new ones. We know those certifications comprise of exams, and those exams are now more sophisticated than they were in the past, insofar as it's not just choose A, B, C, or D, it's go and create a user, go and drag something into the right place on this picture, click on this image, what you would do in order to recover from A. So much more sophisticated. So where does that leave MPN and sort of competencies? Well, it's interesting because there's about to be a massive change from January next year in terms of the competencies, and I'll outline that in a moment or two. Training exam passes are still a fundamental part of the new programme, but it is a massive shake-up. And if there's one action I would say that is a must, as a call-out from this session, is to go and Bing. Other search engines are available. So the Microsoft Partner Network Disclosure Guide, July 2013, where you'll get a heads up on some of the changes that are coming. I've read it several times, backwards, forwards and sidewards. It takes a little while to digest, but you can certainly at the end of that get a feel for how Microsoft are moving forward with this. As a general rule of thumb, if you want a standard silver level competency, you're required to have 2 suitably qualified and exam passed people. If you want gold, then you're required to have 4. That doesn't sit across all of the competencies, but by far the vast majority. My suggestion would be speak to your PAM if you have one, use the Iamcp portal, speak to members of the steering committee, review the competency page on Microsoft's website. I'm just going back to the past again because, as you know, I like it there. Going back a little way, if you wanted a silver platform, if you wanted a silver server platform competency, it was pretty straightforward. You got 2 individuals who had one of those exams and 2 that had one of those. And if you want to become a server platform partner today, this is what you have to do. But if you look at the technologies on there, upgrading from Server 2003, HPC Server 2008, Terminal Services 2008 R2 server virtualization, it's some of it's pretty old stuff. You're still required to have somebody pass the licensing assessment. That's changing slightly with the new competencies. You still require somebody to have passed the marketing assessment. And you can count people multiple times for the silver competency. You can only count them once for gold. But that's a story for another day. I think in January, there'll be a lot of partners who are surprised, who think they can just take their MCTS type certifications and exam passes and turn them into the data platform or into the data centers competencies. It's simply not going to happen. New competencies are emerging. They're bringing the cloud programs like Cloud Essentials and Cloud Accelerate inside the Microsoft Partner Network. But clearly they didn't really exist in that form before. There'll be exams, etc. required for that. Bless you. Competencies have to be earned nationally now. So you're welcome. So there was a time where if you're a US company, you could effectively count certified individuals from the US parent company. That's no longer the case. So if you're trading off the back of credentials earned geographically elsewhere in your business structure, that's no longer allowable. And you can find considerable additional information in the links inside this document if you request a copy. My email address, my Twitter handle, and the Iamcp Twitter handle are on this slide. Feel very free to reach out and get in touch. And that, ladies and gents, is a potted guide in 20 minutes of the MPN. Too many letters involved in this. The Iamcp presents MPN, everything you wanted to know. Thanks.
Thank you, Gary. Can you hear me?
I can indeed.
Yeah, well, I think you certainly covered everything I wanted to know about MPN and certification. So very detailed, and thank you for the presentation. I'd like to welcome Chris and Lubika, who joined us during the presentation. And I did put in the text that we are recording the session, so they will be able to catch up on the early part of it once we can publish the recording. What we'd like to do now is invite Philip. I've just made Philip a presenter, so we might ask Gary to stop presenting and invite Philippa to present her slide. And while we're doing that, we must just invite any questions for Gary in relation to his presentation. You can see your computer now, I think, Philippa, so we can see the link session.
Good.
Just display the slide, we can probably see it.
We did just have a question in terms of is there a grace period for the older certifications? In terms of the competency, you'd probably have to speak to Microsoft. Generally, they're a little bit flexible, but this is untested and untried. So the official answer would be no. But in the past, where there has been challenges, Microsoft have kind of waived the rules the first time a major change has occurred.
Gary, the other thing that's happening is obviously there's changes 1 January, and there's the gold certifications that are changing. Some of them now in October. So, have you got any feedback from the field about, well, if someone was before had to have 4 and now only has to have 2 in January, what happens in the interim?
In the interim, it will be business as usual. Changes.
You have to try and find 4 MCPs.
If there is now a requirement for 4 and it was 2, they're required to go and find an additional 2 individuals. And I think part of the reason Microsoft are doing this is to raise the bar, because there are a lot of guild partners in the channel. So they have made it tougher. Which is why sessions like this give us a good head start. It gives us at least 2 months before January and the massive changes when they start to actually get our ducks in a line.
Mm. Well, look, I've got to do some of those exams, so that was a really helpful session. And also just trying to, an exam that I hadn't done before, and trying to figure out, well, where do you start and what should I really be focusing on and so on. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Philippa. We can see your screen at the moment, but what we're seeing is the Iamcp, the link meeting. There we go. So now we can see your slides. So just to intro Philippa Preston is CEO of Software Optimization Services, and Philippa founded SOS in 2011, and some say that she has a passion for the possible. Philippa has 20 years experience in our industry and is a specialist in software asset management. So over to you, Philippa.
Thank you. Now, can you see the video at all? Not sure.
I can see Software Optimization Services.
Okay, so you can see the slide, but you can't see anything else. Okay.
Well, now we can see the link meeting, but now we're back to the PDF.
Okay, all right, good. Well, the first thing is, so there's 2 parts to this, and the first piece of this is, having joined the Iamcp community, one of the things that came out from a session with the local Microsoft office was, we were always in these partner-to-partner sessions, and yet we're never quite sure what does everyone do here, and especially for some of the niche partners. It was one of the suggestions was made to, well, let's put some bullets together, just a 1-page, try to do it in 3 bullets. What does your organisation do? So that within the partner-to-partner community, if you're looking for a niche player in the field of, for example, software asset management, then you sort of got that, oh, yeah, that's right, you can go to SOS to do that. So this is kind of the first piece of what I wanted to talk about was, well, here is a kind of intro into the practice that I founded and that I run. And fundamentally, it's an area that everyone just cannot, it's vexing and it's complex and too many people just cannot get their heads around. And one of the things that I've sort of always grown up with was, stick to the knitting and be a specialist. So that's what I've done over the past 20-odd years. So our practice is, well, one, it's global. We have virtual teammates as well. And every single one of the people in our team, software licensing management, software asset management is, their passion is their primary focus. And the biggest, what we are trying to do, if I had to, what I'd love to see and be remembered for is that we were able to show organizations that, if managing your software assets, your hardware assets, and your software licenses can in fact become a profit center for an organization. And a classic example is an engagement that we did early this year where we put in a reharvesting and reclaiming process for Project Visio, Adobe, Acrobat, Standard, and Pro. And literally since February, what we were doing is just metering the usage of those applications. And if someone, we would charge the end user, for example, and the project. And if they hadn't used it in the next 90 days, then we were reclaiming it. And then we'd, if someone else had a requisition in their system, then we'd give that particular license to that user. And literally, since we started doing that in February, we had collected, up until the true-up, which has just been now, we've collected $100,000 in terms of what we'd actually charged a project or an end user. And yet we didn't have that much of a true-up to do. So the client actually ended up sort of accruing all these dollars in anticipation that they'd have the money to cover the usage, but actually a true-up, the usage wasn't as high as what they'd actually reclaimed. So that's just it's the quickest win, but it is such a real and such a tangible opportunity to deliver savings and create, literally a profit center in an organization. In terms of what do we do? Well, I would say 80% of our time is spent either pre-audit reviews, post-audit reviews, conducting reviews on behalf of Microsoft and some of the tier 1 publishers. And what's significantly different about us is we do not transact licenses. And I've been in outsource land and I've been in La land. And the thing that drove me to stop my own practice was too many of my clients said, Philippa, as long as you're selling me the license, I don't want you to do this consulting piece of work for me. And really interestingly, we get asked and approached, and we've done a number of engagements where a client just wants an independent assessment as to, my reseller's given me this, the publisher's given me this, how does it look? What do you think? Is it right, isn't it? Because it is such a complex world when it comes to, how to license a server, how to license a user, how to license a mobile device, a desktop, and so on. So that's kind of fundamentally what we do, and why, in terms of why SOS, well, we're sticking to the knitting, right? We really care about the subject matter. It's been our focus as primarily, I've got 20 years, my associates that each have between them 15, 20 years of experience. And we're widely recognized, not only in Australia, but globally for our skill set. And also, I sort of took it upon myself last year to do a certification with KPMG, and currently I'm only the only person outside of Europe with that certification. So yeah, we know what we're talking about, and we're certified and specialists in that field. So in terms of why Iamcp and the partner-to-partner opportunity, well, I wanted to give you just a few examples in terms of how our practice has been able to partner with other partners that have joined Iamcp. So one example is Vigilant IT, and Tom's actually on the steering committee. Obviously, our practice is all about software assets, IT asset management, and Vigilant have a portion of their business which is systems management in the cloud. What happens is we conduct these engagements, and the minute we step away, no one actually does anything, right? There's we make all these steps for remediation, and no one does anything. And so you come back in 12 months' time, and the problem is, usually it hasn't been resolved. So the true-ups are, either double or, in fact, a client that I've just finished, it was actually, that anticipated $500,000, the true-up was $2 million, because they did not take any remediation steps in terms of their server management that we'd recommended in September of last year. So we've teamed up with Vigilant, and one of the things we're trying to put together is, a software asset management, a systems management in the cloud solution, so that at any point in time, dynamically, organizations are actually able to see, let me see what is my position at this point in time. Where are these assets? What have I got versus what have I, in terms of license entitlement versus what I've got deployed, what are the gaps, if any? The other example of another partner that we worked with is, the thing that I love most about where I'm at now, having come from, I've worked for Microsoft, I've worked for distributors, I've worked for the outsourcers, the resellers and LARs. But here you're actually on the field, you're on the floor, you're with a client, you can see what's actually going on. And the discoveries are enormous. And the things that you find is, they've got an issue here and they've got an issue there. And because they've got an issue, for example, with their system center, that is actually impacting our ability to recover the correct charges. So then when you see these opportunities and they don't have a particular partner that they actually work with, or, I sort of have, we focus on trying to actually get, niche players in particular areas. So if we do find those instances in organizations that we're bringing in subject matter experts and niche players to come and resolve the issue rather than, some organizations that can kind of generally just do everything. So that's the greatest opportunity for one in Iamcp. Also, the other opportunity here is to actually understand everyone's business, at the highest level so that I can go, right, if I need, education and learning, that's where we go to DDLS. Or if it's for systems management, we go here. Or if it's for SharePoint services that we're finding along the floor that the client is just, is having so many issues and not currently getting what they need, then we'll team up with this particular partner. So yes, that's the opportunity. That's my business. That's the other thing I wanted to quickly say is the value of Iamcp is that I suppose the community is significant, especially when you go from being a managed partner to not being a managed partner. I found that the community and the experience and I suppose even just the knowledge within our community about upcoming events and changes is really significant and important to me. So thank you.
Thank you, Philippa. Thanks very much for your story in terms of the story of software optimization services and in particular the great case study in terms of partner-to-partner networking and also the value that Iamcp brings to you and SOS. We might just invite Philippa to stop sharing. I'm going to try and run a poll and we'll see how that goes. Didn't work too well in rehearsal. But while I'm doing that, can we please invite any questions for Philippa about her presentation? Any questions for Philippa? Thank you, Philippa. All right, we've had 2 responses to the poll. 3 responses, so people have got access to it. 4 responses, so thank you for that. I would invite everybody now on the call, including Chris and Labika, who joined during the session. Please open up your mics. We can try and unmute you. If you're having problems, I'll try and do that actually. I'll unmute everybody. And please let us know if you've got any questions or comments.
Hello, Gary, can you hear me?
And Lubika. How are you, Chris?
5 minutes. Yeah, hi, somebody just said, hello, Gary, can you hear me? To which the answer is yes.
Oh, hello, yes, sorry, it's Chris Jeffrey here.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris, how are you?
Good, thank you. Sorry I was a bit late. Well, I'm in Brisbane and the calendar appointment came through for 12 o'clock here, rather than 11 where I understand it's for you. So my apologies for the delay.
All right, so we've got a problem there. And Lubika, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you too.
So just before we finish, from any of our attendees, including David, Chris and Lubika, are there any questions or comments about today's session?
Not really, I'm fine, thanks.
All right.
I want to
thank you very much for joining us, everybody. on the call. We're at 12:45, which is when we said we would finish. The review topics, actually, the poll I ran, I've got a button here which says show results to everybody. So let me press that and see what happens. And it looks like out of our 4 respondents, how to use Pinpoint is the most popular topic for the next session. So we will do our best to organise another session in November on how to use Pinpoint. Thank you all very much for your time today.
Chris, did you have a question? I just heard you just say my name again.
No, I didn't say anything, sorry.
No, that was me, Gary. I want to know how you've got a widescreen camera. What camera are you using there?
It's a need-to-know basis, actually, mate. I had no idea I had. It's a Microsoft LifeCam camera, actually. It looks pretty good, I think.
Yeah, I need one for my ego to fit in, so I like the size of that.
Maybe that's why they bought me this, I'm not sure.
Thanks very much, Philippa and Gary. That was great. Very helpful.
No worries. Cheers.
You may receive a few emails from me, though.
Happy to help, my friend.
That would be good.
Have a nice weekend, everybody.
You too.
Okay, thanks very much.
You too.
Thanks for organising
Thanks,
that.
guys.
Thanks all.
Okay.